Well, it's that time again. It's time. Let's get real. My name's George. I sell real estate in Nashville. I also sell real estate in 38 Destin. And my wonderful co-host, Nadia, tell them what you do.
Yeah, so I do real estate in South Florida, specifically Palm Beach County. And we are getting real today.
Absolutely. And I thought this would be a perfect leadway into this because we talk about how to market, how to prospect, but all that's done. You've done all the hard work. You got your first luxury listing. And now it's time. Number one, what is it going to cost me to market this listing?
Right.
And then number two, how am I going to service this listing to keep my clients happy and to show that everything I talked about in the listing appointment, I can actually deliver on? So I guess the first thing is you sign the listing contract. The first thing I always look at, what's the video going to cost me and what's the photos? Now you might say, what do you mean video? Every one of your properties needs to have a video, especially in the luxury market. What's your opinion on that, Nadia?
Yeah, well, especially now, I mean, in my experience we have a lot of snowbirds coming down. So sometimes they're often putting offers on a house. They're not even down here. They're still like in New York or somewhere else. So the video is everything. It tells the whole story of the house. I highly recommend a full walkthrough video or those new 3D videos where you can kind of navigate around a house. Those are very important because often they're putting an offer in sight unseen because they're not down here yet and the market, it gets crazy and they just want to put an offer in right away.
Absolutely. And I think another good point to that, not only for out-of-state buyers that are looking, because I know in Nashville, California tends to relocate here now a lot. We have a lot from Chicago and from the Northeast as well, New York. But another big point is if you're pitching that you're different and that you're going to take their listing to another level and you want to just have that high level, the videos have to be great. It can't be somebody just coming around the house, showing room by room. It's got to have fast transitions, great music, because you want to engage the people watching it and you want to keep your seller from going, wow, I've never seen anybody do that. And now that becomes part of your brand. So I think video, great photos is number one. And, in my experience, and I'd love to hear your opinion on this, I think you can go from as inexpensive to $500, or you can go as high as $3,000 to $5,000, depending if you want to do a full day shoot. And they come in, they interview the agent does the walk around. So there's so many features you could do. But what's your experience in that? What do you think a good price point is?
Yeah, of course, especially if you're just starting out and you have a budget, I mean, you have to go within your budget. But think of it as not an investment in the property, it's an investment in yourself. This is how you're portraying yourself and how you're marketing yourself as an agent. So, if you have great photos and videos and get creative with things, that's going to show what kind of agent you are. So think of it that way.
Yeah, that's a great point. And here's the flip part of it. We're talking about marketing and prospecting, of course. Now, if this is your first high-end listing, now this video, you now have something to show the next client saying, hey, this is the type of work I do for my clients. This is the standard. This is the minimum you're going to get from me is a great video to highlight your home and to find that buyer. So, okay, great. So we got through the video, we got through the photo, we got that cost out of the way. Like we said, anywhere from $500. If you want to go super high end, $5,000, that's going to get you everything. Second point, and these should all be the standard. I think we both can agree on this, right? The stuff that you're going to need for a luxury listing. Number two, and I've seen people cheap out so much, I want to punch them in the face when I go to these open houses. Don't just print the MLS sheet out. You know what I mean? And spend the money. And I know, look, you hit it right in the head. And we'll go into the budget part again, too. I think that was great. Certain companies call them flyers, call them exposés, call them booklets. Depending on the price point, I wouldn't just do a one-sheeter. I'd have either a trifold, a bifold, or a hardbound book if it's depending on your market, of course, you could use that as well. Like if you're in Palm Beach Island and you're lucky enough, you have a good connection, you get a $25 million listing, the sky's the limit in terms of marketing. So what's your take? What do you like to have? Let's say you just listed, because what's the old rule? It's 3 times the average sales price is the luxury definition. So last time I looked in Jupiter, it was like 1.1. So luxury there's 3 million. So you get a $3 million listing tomorrow. What's your choice? What do you like to market it when it comes to flyer, expose, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, one thing I've seen that I liked now is a QR code you can scan and the entire listing will pop up on your phone. That's a new thing that I think a lot of brokers are liking, that I've seen at some high-end brokers opens. So, you know, a lot of times they'll throw away a piece of paper, but like you're saying, if it's like a nice booklet or the QR code scan, I think is awesome. Sometimes they have like an iPad there, just kind of film, like going through photos of the house also. But I like that QR code idea. I think that's pretty cool because everyone's on their phones now, you know, and then it's easy to share it.
Yeah, and then if you go that route, which I think can, number one, it can cost down. It can really drive down your cost. Like you said, if you're on a budget, which is shame in that, whether you have a great company, we'll use Douglas Elliman, for example, or even Compass for both. Douglas Elliman, I believe, and you probably can speak to this a lot more, you can probably put a request into marketing to create something on the digital side of it where you then can take that link and you yourself can get the QR code. Does Douglas Elliman still do that for you guys?
Yes, and you can also, it's nice also with, you can have it linked to your realtor page with Douglas Elliman with the listing up and then your info on the bottom. It actually looks really nice when you do it that way too, when it pops up on someone's phone when they scan it.
You know, what I would do, and I'm with you on this one, I would have something for them to take. And again, it wouldn't just be a piece of paper. It would be, and a lot of them, for lack of a better word, they're laminate, but they're thicker than that. And they have that, they have the gloss. I would at least do a bifold book at a bare minimum. And maybe even on that, have a QR code where it goes to additional places. Now, I think with the cost with that, you can run anywhere. It depends if you make, I think the bare minimum to order on some of those online companies, though, are 25. Let's say you want to have 50 to 100 on standby. Plus, again, you take these pieces, you go to your next listing appointment and say, hey, this is my quality of work. This is what you should expect from me if I get to market and sell your home. You're probably going to, again, you're going to probably run 500, $1,000 if you go really heavy handing. Or if you want to save a few bucks, make a smaller one and then utilize a QR code.
And I think it's important to do a nice broker's open where you're offering that, you know, those kinds of things, because that might get you business in the neighborhood. I know we've had that happen before. We've done some nice brokers opens and then someone from the neighborhood comes in and says, oh, hey, I want to sell my house. You guys do a really good job. So again, you're marketing yourself. You're not just marketing in the house.
Yep. And you're setting your individual standard and your brand to everybody, like you said, in the neighborhood. We'll run through a couple of these quickly because I know we really want to get into the servicing. Another cost, and I would probably do it, especially if it's a neighborhood you love, you got to do just solds. And for one reason, is your phone going to blow up from it? Of course not. Let's not tell everybody a lie and say, oh, you send out 1,000, you're going to get 500 calls. But again, it all goes back to, number one, you're presenting to the neighborhood of saying, hey, we're representing this client. And then on the postcard, you can have everything under the sun. QR codes, links to your videos, everything you want. But then when that house goes under contract, another one goes out. And then when it sells, so now you touch them 3 times. And we'll talk about that in the future. But I'd say that total cost there, and again, you're probably looking at $250, $500. The only thing I would recommend on those, do the 8x11s like we do. We and I work together all the time. That was the standard, because you have to. You want to stand out. You want the bigger ones. Right. So we've covered.
It makes you relevant when you do that. You know,
that's the name of the game right there. And one of the neighborhoods I think we spoke about before, previous guest with Karl, that's how we went in there with 0 sales. And I think 7 months later, I think we had 8 or 10 million in sales from that one neighborhood, from just constant marketing to it. So if you hit those to me are the major 3. Now you can buy stuff above and beyond. I know people buy luxury packages from third-party companies, but I think if you hit those 3, those 3 are huge, and they could set you back anywhere from a couple $1,000 to, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000. Again, that's why we want to price them correctly and sell them. But that's got to be the standard. No more iPhone pictures. That's crazy to see.
Those are so awful. Like, or if you see the person in the mirror, the reflection in the mirror.
And again, some of these too, you can partner up. I know with mortgage companies, they can help build flyers to show how much the house would cost with a loan. And again, once you start getting up to the $5 to $10 million level with these 7% rates, a lot of people who are buying these homes may not even entertain that. They'll just buy cash.
Right. So that's like a whole different Yeah, it's a different market with the buyers coming in. But yeah, you can partner up with mortgage companies. They can sponsor your, especially if you're on a budget, they can sponsor your brokers open. We've had that before. Do some nice flyers for you. It's great. It's a win-win for everybody.
Partnerships with title companies, same thing, they can assist. Now, there are guidelines, of course, that you have to follow per state, and that's up to you guys. I'm not telling you what to do there, but think outside the box too. If there's a luxury brand within your community that you want to partner up with, say, hey, we're having a great open house. It's on the water. I'm trying to think, what's the big yacht company in Palm Beach County? HMY? I believe it's HMY Yachts.
Yeah, I think
know one time I was getting ready to get a listing or an appointment for a waterfront property community. I called them first, say, hey, if we get this, then we have a boat for the day for an open house. Sure, I'll drive the boat over for you guys. So there's all things like that, thinking outside the box. I don't know if you were there with us that day, but we had a place that had perfect spot for an RV, a house with a huge backyard.
I remember that.
Yeah. And we talked to a RV company. They brought down a $400,000 RV.
That was really cool.
So I think those are just some ways to start saying, hey, I'm different. Well, prove it. Right? Prove it to your clients. So let's not beat a dead horse. We could probably talk about this for 2 hours, marketing of it. But anyways, I'd say, and would you agree? Let me know. I would say be prepared to spend on the low end $1,000. I think the middle range probably $2,000 on some of these real big listings.
Yes. Yeah. That's about
absolutely. Right. And stand out. It doesn't get me more pissed off. Even here, I'm in a new market. I see some of these luxury listings with the most cheesiest, horrible adjective in their videos I've ever seen. It's like the simple walkthrough videos. Like, congratulations, we're now back in 2015. You've taken a time machine and gone back in time when it comes to marketing. You don't want to do that. So stand out, be different, and look in different genres for videos too. How different luxury companies, not just real estate, how they highlight their products. So I think it's a very important thing to think about. So enough of that. Enough of me just talking. Nadia, take us to the next point. So you spent the money, you got everything ready. Let's really jump to the most important part, keeping our clients happy and servicing the listing. Why don't you lead us on this one?
Yeah, it's all about service. And, I come from a customer service background, and it's all about communication, number one. Follow up with your sellers. If you have a listing and there's a showing, even if you have not heard back from that buyer's agent, let them know that. I've seen some agents make the mistakes. They go silent on their sellers, and then the sellers are anxious, like, okay, what's happening? And they're waiting to hear back from the feedback. Just call them right after the showing and say, hey, I think the showing went well. They're going to get with the buyers. The agents they're gonna all talk, or I haven't heard from them yet. Just anything. Just follow up. That's key. It's all about concierge service. What's that?
Before you go too far, I have a question. So you mentioned someone shows the house. I know you're like a pit bull about getting that feedback, like, hey, I need it. Do you have questions already ready, or is it dependent upon house? Like, do you have follow-up questions like, what did your clients think of the price? What did your clients think of the condition? If they did make an offer, what would it be? How in-depth do you get with the agents who show it? Yeah,
so it depends. Of course, it's situational. So one little piece of advice that I have for other agents out there when they haven't heard back from the buyer's agent, if there was a question the buyers had, it could have been something little, and you had to get back to them on that. That's a good opportunity right after the showing. Give it a little bit of time, maybe like a couple hours, but say, hey, I found out what kind of light fixture that is, or I found out, if the property's zoned for this. So just follow up with that question, and then that will give the buyer's agent the opportunity also to say, oh, hey, you know what? They're going to pass. They want to be in a different area. But then you have your answer like right away. And it kind of reminds them, because some of these agents, they're seeing like multiple houses in a day, and they won't follow up necessarily. Or, oh, hey, my sellers are out of town. They're going out of town. I mean, my buyers are going out of town. They still need to decide. Just anything, so that's one way to do it.
Okay, so you do the follow-up consistently with people who show the house. What's another facet of your follow-up? I mean, not your follow, excuse me, your managing the listing and everything from there.
Yeah. So I like weekly market updates with what's happening in not only their neighborhood, but also just the area in general. So they can kind of get a sense, all right, we still have this many contingent homes in the neighborhood or in the area. This is still the average days on market. So then they have a good understanding of where their house is, in relation to the competition and the other homes. And that also gives you a good opportunity to discuss a price reduction if necessary. If you're seeing that this other house just sold, it was only on the market for a smaller amount of time, but their price was a little lower, for example.
Sure.
So following up with that, I think, is important.
Yeah, and I love your idea of not just doing the neighborhood. I think so many people just do that. Or like, hey, I got nothing to report, nothing sold in the neighborhood. It gives you, like you said, a broader stance in the market and say, hey, this is what's going on. 3 houses over 2 million sold, not in the neighborhood, of course, but this entire area. So this is what we're looking at. That's great. And then one thing I want to add on, when you talk about the price reduction, this is a question I think so many agents are just terrible at, and it's not their fault. They just never taught this. If you're going to do the price reduction, think about the seller. You're coming to them and saying, hey, we have to lower. Most of the time they don't like to hear that. The next thing out of your mouth should be, and here's what I'm prepared to do. Whether it's a social media campaign, how many times you're going to get it out there. And I know we skip social media in terms of costs. We'll cover it at the end, but that's one of the things should be, you do a price reduction, but here's what you're going to get from it, from me, to get this back out there. Not just, I know the lazy way, people are going to hear it, that just don't cancel the listing and put it back on the MLS to the price. Yes, people do that, but there's also a lot you can do above that. But you hit a great point there. So we've hit the weekly updates. What else do you have for us?
Yeah, I think it's important to, when you have a high-end listing, don't get lazy. Show up to the showings. You can't throw a lockbox on like a house that's over like $2 million. And then that's going to be a reflection of you and what kind of agent you are. And, the best compliment, these people can give you is a referral, right? So as far as sellers go. So if they're like, yes, she came to every showing, or you can't be in 3 places at once. You have a co-listing agent or an assistant, as far as, an assistant agent who can do backup showings for you. But don't get lazy on that. Show up to the showings. It's very, very important.
Yeah, that's especially a great point. That's what got to make us so valuable together. I would handle certain things, and you love doing the showings.
Yeah.
What do you think was so important about it for you that when you did them, what advantages did you get that you could ultimately leverage back to your seller when you get to go there and do the actual showing?
Yeah, so it was important as far as even just like knowing what lighting to put on. If something that you knew was going to be problematic, like I remember there was a house where it was noisy in the backyard because it was close to like the road. And so we talked about, they have the impact windows, or they're willing to give a credit for fencing and extra shrubs to kind of hide, to kind of soundproof a little more. Just like little things like that. So then the buyers didn't come in and were completely deterred and then left. So
you could get ahead of problems. Like you could get ahead of problems before they started. You could say, hey, we know about this. The sellers, that's great. What?
Yeah, and just being able to answer questions about the house, talking about the schools. Maybe that buyer's agent doesn't know that that area is like A-rated schools. So it's important to go through all those things too. When you're there. And because the buyer's agent doesn't always know that. So.
And I think you did it so many times. I would get a phone call from you and you say, hey, the showing went well. I'm pretty sure we're going to get an offer in today. Because you could read the body language. I know a lot of buyers and their agents keep it close to the vest because they don't want to give anything away. I get it. But I think 9 out of 10 times you were always right. You're like, hey, be prepared. We're probably going to get an offer today. I could kind of tell because you're in that role enough. You can read all the behaviors. So I think that's another great one. Okay, so you covered, you're right, in-person showing, don't be lazy. And that's another way, again, to build your personal brand. Hey, when you get this listing, this is the full service you're going to get. So we got through that. Is there anything else they should be doing in terms of servicing that listing?
Yeah, I mean, as far as I take it the approach of concierge service, as far as, you're working for them. So it's important that they know that also. And just knowing that you're always there for them, taking their calls, and I usually ask them also, what's the best way to get in touch with you? Do you prefer text? Do you prefer phone call, email? Because some people are more old fashioned. They want a phone call. Some people would rather have a text. So I think that's important too, to just make sure that's what their preferred method of contact is, and don't just assume you can send them a text message. They might not want that. So that's important too.
I think you hit it right in the head. That is so underrated, of knowing every aspect of, even with something as simple as saying, hey, Nadia, so every Friday, that's the day we like to do our market updates. Of course, it's Friday work for you. And then it's simple. What's the best point? Do you want a phone call? Would you like a text message? Would you like an email? And then we start knowing their preferences. And that's going to go a long way with them, because maybe you took the listing over from somebody and they barely talk, because we know what happens. 30 days in, no showings, and then the communication stops because the average agent thinks, what should I talk about? What should I say? Where if you cover all this, if you've taken notes during this, or maybe you're already a pretty good agent and you can pick something out of this, but I think if you combine all that, there should be no reason this person doesn't stick with you. I really don't. 100%. Because then it stops people from me like calling and saying, hey, you want to make a change? Like, no, I love my agent.
Yeah,
there's things like that. So is there anything that we missed on your end from servicing? I mean, I know we can go to a million small things, but are there any more like...
I think those are the big ones.
Okay.
Yeah, communication, showing up to the showings. That's important. Follow up, that's big, but that's the communication component's the biggest one. And think of it as, concierge service for your seller.
Yeah, and that's 99, not 90, but it's very high, the communication. Because most of the times when you talk to people who had a bad experience with an agent, it's always the communication. I didn't know about this, or they weren't clear about that. And you know what? When we're not clear, or if we don't take the extra 5 minutes to call them, maybe they had a bad experience before. Now the client's starting to think, oh, great, I hired another bad agent. And now you're behind the 8 ball because you didn't take the 5 minutes, like you said. Call them, text them, hey, this just happened. I over-communicate, because then when I'll hear it afterwards and they'll just say, we never had anybody like you. Well, it's a very simple thing.
Right.
It's over-communicate. So, and then I just want to jump back real quick, and we'll wrap this up. And of course, anything else you have. The social media aspect of it, as far as we go back to the marketing part, that's got to be a bare minimum, I think, 3 times a week. But find creative stuff, not just the same. Throw it up there, just listed. Maybe highlight a different room. Highlight a different feature. Keep the listing relevant and keep it in front of people. And I know one thing that we didn't talk about too, and this is probably more the servicing. You get that listing and you tell that client, I'm going to do everything in our power to get this thing sold. Everything you want, I'm going to get done. One thing I think it's underrated. Of course, you do an email campaign and everything else. Call some of the top agents. Do the research. Who sells the most in that neighborhood? Even on the buyer side, give them a call. The best line I like, hey, Nadia, I know you're one of the top agents in this neighborhood. We just listed this home. I just want to let you know, here it is. Oh, by the way, I'm going to email you or text you if you want a link to the video. Share it with your clients. Be that agent that goes above and beyond. Right. And business will start coming your way more and more, regardless if it's a seller's market, buyer's market. Just be the best person that you can be in it. All right, so let's wrap this thing up. Do you have any great information to give to everybody before we get out of here? Is there anything that we left out?
I think that we covered a lot there. So
it'd be great too. Maybe in the future we'll get some more high-end agents in here that they can kind of talk about their service, their individual plan if they want to be down. I know some agents don't. But let's get somebody who can talk about it so you guys can hear from other opinions as well. If you have anything else for us, comment. Let us know. Let us know what you do. But I think, Nadia, it's time to say goodbye to everybody, and we'll be on to the next one.
Yes, thanks for tuning in.
Absolutely. We'll see you next time.